I have a film on YouTube. How long till I can watch it in 3D?
You open the YouTube app on the LoomPad 2, you hit the share button, you hit the Leia 2 button, and then 5 seconds later, you're watching your movie in 3D.
AI is being used for scripting, for shooting and producing movies.
AI is being used for everything.
Hollywood production is being transformed by artificial intelligence.
Hey, it's Caleb and Shelby, and welcome back to the Curious Refuge podcast. We're really excited about this episode because we sat down with the team at Leia Inc. to chat about the future of 3D filmmaking. So typically when you work on a 3D film, you either have to shoot it in 3D or you have to convert it in post-production, and it's a very tedious process. In turn, 3D films really are only created by high-end studios. But what if it was possible for you as an independent creator to create your own 3D films within seconds? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of the podcast. So now I'm going to kick it over to Shelby to get started.
Leia Inc. is an organization that has been utilizing AI technology for their entire existence. They make entertainment more captivating by utilizing 3D and AI technology in conjunction with one another. Leia Inc. has over 10 3D apps, from 3D streaming, 3D gaming, 3D chats, not to mention they also have a tablet called the LoomPad 2 that provides immersive 3D viewing without glasses in real time. In short, they have a tablet that converts any video into 3D, which is incredible. So here today with us is Marlon Fuentes, who is the social media and community manager over at Leia, and Nima Zagame, who is the director of product. Thank you for joining us, Marlon, Nima, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
So I know I've slightly introduced you both, but I'd love to hear, because Leia is so unique in what you do, and we're pretty new to you guys, but you've been around for a very long time. How do you explain maybe to your parents or to someone who's not familiar with Leia what it is that your company does and what you do there?
Yeah, I think seeing really is believing. So I try not to even explain it, because whenever I do, people are like, I don't know what that means. Like, what is that? So usually what I'll do is I'll take the LoomPad 2 and I'll just flip the screen over. I'll be like, look at this. And then they immediately get it. They're like, well, they either immediately get it and go, oh my God, this is amazing. Or they go, how is this possible? What is this wizardry? What kind of magic is this? If I don't have one of our devices around, I, of course, use Leia Pix, and I go, hey, check this out. What's your favorite celebrity? Pull it up on Google, download an image, be like, boom, check this out. Check out this incredible depth animation. Or I say, hey, let me take a picture of you and your friend real quick. Take the photo, turn around, be like, check this out. And once people see it, they understand. They get it. They go, how do I do this? How is this accessible? When does this come out? And I get to go, hey, it's been out for a while. You can access it right now. You don't have to wait. Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
That's amazing.
That's right. Yeah. 3D anywhere, anytime, on any device. I think that's the vision and the idea there.
That is so cool. I mean, the image speaks for itself, it sounds like.
I feel like the first time that I used Leia Pix for the first time, it was absolutely mind-blowing, especially in the context of using artificial intelligence, because to those of you who have never used it, literally you just upload an image and immediately it creates this kind of 3D parallaxing effect that is maybe somewhat similar to if you've worked on an After Effects project file in the past with like images and you've cut out the different planes and used cameras that fly in 3D space, but it does it automatically. So you literally don't have to adjust anything. You just drop in the image and it automatically does the movements. It's really incredible. And it was very much a magical experience getting to interface with it for the very first time.
I'm curious with that, like, how long have you guys had Leia Pix as one of the tools?
So the original app is actually just called Leia Pix, and was an app on our on the smartphone that we made about 5 years ago. It was a launch app for that, and we had it a little bit earlier for beta testers too. And that's basically a social network for image sharing. And we saw lots of people were creating incredible things, but most people were using just regular 3D photos. So they had to have a 3D camera, and then they were going and capturing that. But we saw some creators were going and doing some really crazy stuff. They were, either rendering things to get the photos to share with people, or they were, trying to use like a third-party tool on desktop and spending, like minutes to generate a depth map for a single image and then using that to create something. And so that sort of evolved to the point where we're like, well, this is really cool. How do we make it more accessible? And so one of the first things we did was we go, okay, well, like one of the problems is that people can only see it on a 3D device. So we made it so that if you send a link from an image that you uploaded to Leia Pix, if you send that to someone, it would have this automatic left and right horizontal animation to it. So people could take their 3D photos and they would get this image when they send the link to their friend. And people love that because they're like, wow, well, now I don't have to only share with other people 3D displays. I can send the links to the things I post to like my friends, my family, and they can get this sense of the depth on any device. And so once that happened, we ended up seeing a need in the market for something that was a little bit more accessible. So you didn't need a Leia device to access it. And we saw some open source projects out there that were pretty interesting. And then RAI was evolving at a breakneck pace. And so we basically started working on Leia Pix Converter about 3 years ago now. And then it was on hiatus off and on until 2 years ago when I finally, me and a couple of our engineers, we finally got the app out. And so it's been out for 2 years. And then about a year ago, as I'm sure you all know, the AI explosion happened. And suddenly we saw ourselves rocketing to the top of top 10 AI tools lists all over the place. And that really completely changed the world for that. But the original idea was, hey, how do we make an accessible application that everyone can use and access 3D, which will hopefully bring more people into our platform? And it evolved into like, wow, we have this incredible tool. How do we make this a part of every single 2D and 3D workflow, regardless of what platform or device you're on? Whether you're on 2D, whether you're on our 3D displays, whether you're on a VR headset, our product's useful. And so it's been evolving to be as useful as possible to as many people as possible.
And how do you guys envision that working with creative? So obviously Leia Pix, which is the tool I'm most familiar with because that's kind of what introduced me to what you guys are doing. It's an online application, very easy to use. But from what you're saying, it sounds like you actually want to involve it at a different part of the creative process and maybe more in line with creatives as they are actually putting these things together beyond just a simple web page application that you drag and drop images.
It's really exciting what's happening right now because creators are beginning to use the depth map output from Leia Pix Converter to do incredible things. Just yesterday, we were following a creator that is using them for mesh reconstruction, using Unity and creating all sorts of really amazing demonstrations. Another creator is doing this and mixing it with Adobe Aero to put, create like a Jurassic scene and put dinosaurs into the scene. And, so I think creators are really beginning to understand the possibilities when using, depth. And it's really exciting to be kind of a part of that creative process for them. Not to mention just even storytellers that, want to keep the integrity of the art, the generative art that they're creating, but add depth and feel to these, short films, we could call them vignettes. It's almost like a graphic novel, but we're talking about introducing new genres of storytelling completely, with some of these tools. So it's pretty exciting. Absolutely.
That is so cool. And I'm curious, you were Nima mentioning about the explosion of AI in this last year. You guys started in 2014, is that right?
Yeah, Leia was spun out of HP in 2014. Yep.
Okay. And so that's wild. So 2014 to now 2023 in this last year of AI, how has the company and the use of AI just changed in that time? And I'm curious, how has this last year impacted your company and your team just with the growth?
So I think what's pretty interesting is that it's like completely revolutionized like what the company is, right? So we are primarily a display company. We make the best displays in the world. They're 3D displays that you can look at and see depth without needing any glasses or anything like that. They're a flat display you can put on any device, smartphone, tablet, laptop, etc., and just see the depth instantaneously. But it does require you to purchase a new next generation product to be able to see that. AI was kind of a means to an end for us, right? We realized like, okay, we're capturing all this content, but like, for example, our first smartphone, it had a 3D camera on it, but we're like, oh man, like the depth's limited. It's really hard to make a 3D camera on a phone that's so tiny and have it have tons of depth. So we're going to use AI to kind of boost that depth. And when we started doing that, we were like, well, when you're boosting the depth, you're going to end up like causing some like stretching and some smearing. So maybe we could do some in painting there. And then once you do the in painting, you're like, well, this is pretty cool, but like, what if you could like add an animation? And then we're like, okay, well, what are the unique things you can do with 3D? It's like, well, what if you could relight the image so you can just change the lighting and use that 3D depth to do that? And all these things kind of just kept evolving from like, okay, the camera needs the 3D to do this. And then it got to the point where we're like, okay, well, what if we can make photos turn 3D automatically? And then, now we're even doing some really crazy stuff like, what if you could turn your soccer live stream into 3D in real time and view like the same soccer live stream in 3D in a VR headset and on our devices? And that's stuff that's ready and is going to be coming out in the next few months to next year. But I think the really cool thing about it now is that instead of AI being a kind of a means to an end, like a tool that just makes our existing stuff better or just like solves a problem for us, AI has become a medium within itself, and people are engaging with it just because of the creativity and the freedom and the possibilities that it adds, right? It becomes part of the process to playfully just try things and see how things look in different ways, and just bring that joy in just engaging with the tool itself, as opposed to the tool just being a solution to a problem. And I think that's really been the massive difference we've seen in the last year versus before.
I have so many questions based on what you just said. So first off, you just said that Leia has developed technology, the Luma Pad 2, that essentially allows the audience to watch a 3D film or video without glasses. So I guess my first question here is how is that even possible?
Yeah.
It seems like that's just some sort of wizardry.
Yeah, I mean the hand wavy answer is nanotech. That's like usually what I do because I don't want to get super deep into it. But we have a few different display technologies, and ultimately, I'm just going to explain it at a high level. What you're able to do is if you have the right structures, you can bend light in different directions, like bend photons at like a very small scale. And if we are able to bend the photons and send different light to each of your eyes, you're going to think that what you're seeing is 3D, because that's how the real world works. Each of your eyes gets light from every object from a slightly different angle. And so we're basically just trying to send the right photons to the right eye at the right time. And if we do that, then you're going to see 3D, even though the display itself is flat.
I'm very curious because I actually have strabismus. Do you know what this is?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lazy eye, and I have never been able to see a 3D movie. So I go to the theaters. I can't, I put on the glasses. It's just like the screen's flat. So I'm very curious if you guys are looking at how to, can folks with conditions like mine see 3D with these pads? Or
that's a great question. Yeah. So effectively, there's actually, people don't talk about this, but there are a variety of what we call depth cues in human perception. And so the main one that everyone talks about is stereoscopy. So stereoscopy is a disparity in what your left eye and right eye see. And a lot of people are stereo blind or have various eye health issues that makes one eye weaker than the other, or one eye is offset from the other. And all these issues can cause issues with the perception of stereoscopy. But stereoscopy is not the only depth cue. There's actually a few other ones. There's accommodation, and then there's, crucially, parallax. Parallax is like the easiest way to kind of see it is when you look into a far distance and you move your head back and forth, you'll notice that objects in your vision move at different speeds based on how far away they are from you. And in human perception, what we've learned is even when people think that they're not moving, they're like, oh, I'm sitting somewhere and I'm looking at something straight. Our whole perception of the world is based on micro movements. We're always just slightly moving our head, even if it's imperceptibly. And we're doing that for both the ability to get these parallax cues and for our ears to be able to hear things from slightly different angles, which is how spatial audio works. So to kind of answer that question, we are one of the first 3D platforms that supports both stereoscopy and parallax, which means even if you have issues perceiving stereoscopic depth, as you move your head around, you're going to be seeing new angles on the experience, which is basically means anyone can experience 3D.
That's amazing. All right. I need it now. That's amazing. So exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you think of it once you get a chance to put eyes on it.
Yeah, we definitely want to play around with one. I can tell you that much. So you said something else earlier that I feel like might have flown under the radar a little bit, but feels incredibly revolutionary in terms of the way in which we consume content. You said that you guys are putting together essentially the software and technological structures in place to live stream what would be a 2D video image, and that would then get converted into 3D that you can consume in VR or in 3D using a device like the one you guys are creating. That seems like an incredible leap forward in terms of like the way in which we experience things that are live, because we've all watched things that are live, whether it's Twitch live streams or even like concerts or sports or things like that on a TV screen. It's fun, and obviously like it's a great communal experience, but it doesn't feel like you're actually at that event. From what you're saying, you're kind of beginning to simulate what it would be like to be there. Have you guys played around with that live streaming, and how does that change, and how do you, I guess, even emotionally feel consuming this 3D experience versus a traditional 2D experience in live streaming?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the core benefits of having AI be part of your media decoding process is that you as a viewer can kind of transform it to your own desire. Right now, we're focused on just adding that depth to things, so that when you're looking at a screen that has a soccer match, it suddenly more looks like you're in the bleachers in the stadium looking down at the soccer players, rather than like looking through a little rectangle at like a window. But in the future there can be crazy things, like if you want to watch a sports game with your kid, but your kid doesn't care about cricket, you could be like, hey, what if I turn every one of the players into a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle? And then your kid's gonna be watching with you and be like, oh yeah, like Raphael went and he just scored right there, and get them really excited about it that way. But I think AI is going to enable all of that. I think that the interesting thing about our technology is that it's really a bridge between the past and the future. You can take movies from 100 years ago, like classic black and white movies, and see them with full 3D depth and just see them in a completely new and exciting and interesting way. But you can also bring those old films into new mediums like VR and AR and watch them in a way where you really wouldn't do that normally. Most VR usage today is people playing VR games because those are made for VR. They're completely new, novel experiences. If you want to watch a movie, you're going to take the headset off, go sit at your TV and watch the movie, right? But our technology kind of gives you a reason to keep the headset on. It lets you say, well, what if I could watch that video of my best friend's birthday a month ago and see what that looks like from this angle? Or what if I could see my favorite movie in a whole new way? Or what if I could, instead of having a 60-inch TV that's in my living room that I sit away from, what if I've got this like massive, like 100-foot theater display that's fully 3D with things coming out of the screen? And that's what our AI technology enables. And we have it working in real time. We have different models of it. So if you're on a mobile device, we have real time for photos and videos. It runs at 30 FPS on mobile devices, and it looks really good. But the stuff that you're seeing on, for example, Leia Inc converter, it is running in the cloud. We're spending a little bit more time. We're not doing it real time because photos don't need to be 100% real time, but we give you really high quality depth maps, really high quality processing, but that's using the exact same tech, just tuned for that use case. And then we've got the real-time stuff for like the sports live streaming. So that runs at real-time 60 FPS in our cloud, which means that if sports teams want to work with us, or news stations, or really anyone with good live streaming content they want, they'll be able to hit our API, send all their frames to us, and we'll just return 3D frames. And they can send those 3D frames anywhere. They can send them to YouTube, they can send them to a VR headset, they can send it to a LoomPad 2, they can send them anywhere. And you can use that same feed and also have the 2D there. So it's backwards compatible. If someone wants to turn the 3D off for a second and see it in 2D, they can. There's no downside to encoding the 3D data using our formats. So Yeah, lots of options.
Something that's really, really exciting for creators that have shot 360 video, monoscopic 360 video in the past. I was one of those people that was using like 3D printed, 360 camera holders and, bought a bunch of GoPros, basically duct taped them together and, was out shooting content, right? The idea of shooting stereo 360 at that time was like such a hurdle, right? Not to mention the editing process was very, very daunting, and still is very, very challenging. To be able to play back 360 footage in stereo, even from YouTube, is absolutely like mind blowing to anybody that had that experience because, of course, you just, it's a heightened sense of realism. And, as you mentioned, putting on a headset, viewing monoscopic content like was fun and it was great and very fulfilling for people that went out and shot amazing films. But to see it in stereo now is quite a treat, and that's all, thanks to AI.
So you're saying that when you're consuming, let's say, a 360 video on YouTube and looking around, that this technology actually converts it to where it feels not only immersive in terms of being all around you, but also it has the depth at the same time?
Yeah, you got it. So if you, there are like 3D 360 cameras, but they cost like, Insta360's model that does 3D, the cheapest one they got is like $5,000. And then the high-end one they have is $15,000. And so if you're like a professional, you could have bought one of those and then worked with that, and that's really hard. But with our technology, you can use a $400 camera, and then using our AI, you're getting up there and almost one-to-one matching the quality of like the $5,000 camera, which I think that's really one of the really cool things about AI is once you have the models are software, right? Like you can distribute it wherever you want, whenever you want, which helps kind of bridge the gap between people's hardware, right? A lot of people don't have games that can, they don't have PCs that can run 4K 60 FPS. But if you have AI that's doing upscaling from 1080 to 4K, suddenly you do have a PC that can run 4K. It's the same thing with our technology. If you have a cheap 360 camera that only cost you 200, 300, 400 bucks, and you're pretty sad, you're like, well, everything's flat, it's not 3D. Suddenly our AI goes, okay, your cheap camera, it does the same things as the super expensive cinema quality camera. And I think that's kind of where the magic comes from.
It does seem like across the board, it's funny that you're using language that I've heard almost every single AI enthusiast and company bring up, like words like bridge and amplify. Like it seems like AI, what it's doing is taking these rudimentary tools and then it's putting them in a new league, a new category. Like it's elevating what you've created and kind of putting it in the same quality where professionals used to live versus everyday creators. And so it seems like it's very much bridging that gap and kind of shrinking the divide and the difference between what an everyday creator can put together and what some of the biggest studios are capable of. And I would say on that note, so you just said that a $400 360 camera can produce, the same quality of a multi-$1,000 camera, which is an incredible innovation. Even if that's all you guys did, like that's amazing, right? But it seems like from an audience's perspective, and really as, a filmmaker, or if an independent filmmaker is watching this, it seems like your technology then can be used, or maybe one day will be able to be used, to convert someone's film that was not shot in 3D at all into a 3D film that looks, to your point, pretty good. Like, where are we at with that technology as it relates to your software? Is that available to filmmakers? I'm really curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we launched the real-time conversion for video about, I'd say like doing it locally is really the only way that I would do it, which we launched that about a year ago. So you could have any movie, any 2D movie, any video clip, and if you had it on our device would in real time convert it into 3D for you. So that works with any movie that you've got, any clip that you took, videos of birthday parties and favorite memories with your friends, etc. It works, right? But what we're moving towards is within a few weeks, we're going to be adding video to our cloud API. And once video is in the cloud API, what we want to see happen is right now, a big part of the reason why a lot of movies are not 3D. Only the most expensive movies, right? Like the biggest Hollywood blockbusters, the Marvel films, Disney movies, Pixar, etc. Those all get 3D because they're massive movies. They have huge budgets. It's worth it for them to do 3D. But for a lot of people, it's not worth it to do 3D because 3D is just too expensive to do. It's too expensive to hire a studio to do it. You don't know if you're going to get your ROI on that. But once our API is video ready, the real beauty there is the ability to hit that API and get back an 80% production ready depth map for every single frame in the movie. And so instead of going from 0 to 100, you only have to go from 80 to 100. So we just cut your labor costs in 80% of the labor costs just disappeared into thin air for like a really cheap price. Like our per frame cost right now for photos is like 4 cents a frame, right? This is incredibly cheap. Normally people are paying anywhere from 60,000 for like a short film up to like $250,000, even like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 million to do a 3D conversion of a movie. And we're cutting that down, and not only does it save you money, it saves you time. If you have a movie and the turnaround, the movie needs to come out in 2 months, a lot of time you're just like, yeah, we can't do a 3D conversion. There's not enough time to do it. Well, we just cut out 80% of the work. So suddenly you're like, well, 2 months is, I think we can do that. That sounds great. So it's pretty much ready to go. The tech is here. We just haven't put it on the server for people to access yet.
So can you talk real quick about technologically then, what is the difference between the current stereoscopic conversion workflow versus how you imagine once you release these new tools, what that process would be like?
Yeah. So the way that a lot of people do it, assuming that you don't have a depth map from the movie originally, or you're not doing stereo rendering, like for example, historically for 3D animation movies, they would just do a stereoscopic rendering of the movie, which is pretty complicated, but they even stopped doing that. Or if you have like a Marvel movie, every single scene is recreated in full 3D anyway, because they need to do that to do all the VFX and stuff like that. So for those the process is sometimes different, but the way that it works over 90% of the time today, and has for the last like 7-8 years, is that you start by getting just a 2D movie, and then people go through and they use special tools, and they kind of like rotoscope out each of the characters and sets and objects that matter. And then you have to like map them between the different scenes so that it like interpolates between them as they move. And that even uses AI to kind of do edge detection and to like automate, like, okay, that's a person and that person's moving here. And then you have to like set the levels of depth manually and draw that, and then use the tool to interpolate that over and over again for it to all be set up. And then, once you've got it to a good spot, then you'll render it. Then you'll like check it with your glasses-based 3D display, and you'll be like, oh, that has an error. So you have to take it off and you have to try again and hope that you got it right. Sometimes you can do it live, sometimes you can't. The way that it's going to work from now on is that you're going to hit our API. It's going to give you back two things. It's going to give you a depth map for every single frame, and it's going to give you a full 3D version of the movie. So you'll have a full 3D version of the movie right at the get-go. You watch the 3D version and you just take notes and like, okay, I want to change that, I want to change that, I want to change that. So you got like timestamps and everything. And then you just go to those depth maps and you just like clean them up and then hit re-render, and then you get the full movie. So maybe you'll only need to do like 2 revisions and you'll be good to go, because you're starting out by being like, I see it in 3D, here are the things I want to change. You go change them, get the render. You're like, okay, maybe I'll change this part, and then you're done. So that goes from all the parts of like having to manually find each object and track them between frames. You don't have to do that. The AI just does it for you. Just gives you the full depth map.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like really what's happened is the labor intensive and really tedious work of essentially rotoscoping, which is widely considered to be one of the worst roles in the process of putting together a film. It sounds like you guys are really elevating those artists who work on those projects to more be folks who are coming in and editing and polishing and really using their taste to refine, as opposed to the hyper labor intensive projects that can be a little mind numbing, for lack of a better words.
100%. And I think AI just does things that it doesn't even make sense to have someone do. Like I remember there's this one scene. I work at a 3D company, so I'm very particular about stuff. There's one scene in Spider-Man Far From Home where they're in the mountains and they're like in a bus, and I saw the camera pan over and I see some trees, and the depth on the trees is just like completely wrong because they didn't. It doesn't make sense to do this. They would have had to go through and like manually like have every single leaf and set the depth for every leaf and all the things through it. So they were like, it's just kind of like a short scene. What if we just kind of fuzz it? But then the problem is that if you look through the leaves, instead of the background being far back like it's supposed to be, the background is just at the exact same place the trees are, which doesn't make any sense, right? But our AI would just do that for you. So and even if AI is like, let's say like a little wrong, like sometimes 20% wrong, it's way easier to just be like, I'm going to go clean up a few of these rather than I'm going to go tag every single leaf and go tag the background and try to do some color correction and set the, segment based on the color values and all that kind of stuff. I think people can still do that if they, hate their lives and want to do a bunch of needless work, but I'd rather just make that easy for them. I want them to focus on the parts that matter. How do you make the 3D look really cool? How do you make it so that when Spider-Man's shooting his web, it comes out of the screen and just looks beautiful and feels like you're going to get hit with the web if you don't move out of the way? Those are the things they should be spending their time on, not like little details about why that tree looks bad when people see it in the theater.
I love that. And I feel like that really hits on kind of the ethos of what we talk about here at Curious Refuge. And I'm sure the folks at Leia feel the same way. AI really is it's a tool to help elevate everyone and to help elevate their not only creative potential, but to allow them to introduce taste into the process much sooner. So you're not having to worry about the utility, sit down, either like creating the thing 100% from scratch. You totally have that right and you're able to do that. But now you're actually able to interface with these tools, and it's like working with an assistant, a creative assistant that can do the parts that maybe you aren't entirely passionate about, which is super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to look at that is that people always say that, the best camera is the one that you have with you. And I think the reason for that is that, even as creatives, even people who are super passionate and want to build things in the world, the more friction there is, the less of the thing that you can do and the less you want to do that thing. And I think that what our tools do is they free you from all that tedium. They free you from the difficulty of that process and let you just create. I think that one of the reasons we really developed AI is because we realized that like if we had a smartphone with a 3D display, originally it was not going to have a 3D camera. It was just going to have a 3D display, and it was like, hey, you can watch 3D movies on it. If you have a 3D camera, go take photos and you can bring it onto the device and view them, but you can't take 3D photos with it. And the realization was like, that doesn't work. Like if people have to go do that, they're just not going to take 3D photos. They're just not going to share 3D photos. So we should put the camera on the device. But once you put the camera on the device, you're like, well, a smartphone's really small. We can't make something where the depth is really far. And so the AI enabled us to put a small baseline 3D camera into a smartphone and let people take 3D pictures, which then has turned into one of the biggest open 3D image data sets in the world that's based on our social network Leia and has allowed literally hundreds of thousands, actually at this point, millions and millions of images to be uploaded through the Leia system, and hundreds of thousands of active users. We have millions of total accounts, but hundreds of thousands of active users, and none of that would have been possible without this AI. And I think reducing that friction was really critical to that. I think Marlon was gonna say something about that too.
Yeah, I think it's just such a wonderful time to be a generalist, to be a creative generalist, and to, be inspired and know that you can take action on those inspirations using all of these tools. I think, it's such an incredible time to be a creative person. I think while there's still a lot of merit in like specializing in different skill sets and different tools and techniques, one thing that's this really inspiring for me is just seeing people that come from so many diverse backgrounds. Maybe they didn't have like a super technical background, but they are inspired to tell a story, and they're able to just go ahead and do that. I know for myself, I didn't come from a tech background per se. I started my career in theater, and as immersive media, started to bubble up, I just started going to meetups, and I started to get my whatever equipment I could get my hands on, and this is going back to like Google Cardboard days, right? So where we're at now, where any content, new or old, can be 3D, and not to mention all the other, experiments and really, really exciting projects that you can do with depth, just makes it just an incredible time to be a creator.
That's so cool. And I love how you both have talked about reducing friction, because I feel like in many ways, the film industry is an industry of friction, right? Like the whole thing, there's just, whether it's technical barriers, political barriers, social barriers, there's just financial barriers, like there's just so many spots and opportunities for a creative project to not happen. Like it really is frankly a miracle that projects even can make it to the theater because of the amount of work and the challenges that creative projects have to go through to get there. It really seems like technologies like the ones you're developing and like we've seen over the last few months and years are reducing that friction. And I would imagine that means a lot to your point, Marlon, general creatives who now will be able to get higher level stories and maybe even like feature films out there in using technologies like 3D for the very first time. It sounds like it's a very exciting time to be a general creative.
Yeah. Not to mention, I think one of the things that got me started in the 3D display space was just the fact that a lot of my content was only viewable in a headset. And as we all know, not everyone for different reasons either wants or can just put on a headset, right? And so I was looking for other modalities to begin to showcase, my immersive work. And so what's really exciting for me is just a world where 3D is just so accessible and, available in your pocket, in your backpack, on your desk, in your living room, and it's an option. I mean, I think it's just a really, really exciting time, to be able to showcase, immersive content in ways, outside the headset.
I'm curious, is there a point in time where you see that folks will be able to gather around a TV in the same room and watch something, maybe using your product, from the same screen, or will they always need to have their own headset or their own LumaPad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable that that's going to happen. I think that everything that you do, whether it's a creative work or whether it's a hardware product or whether it's a software product or whatever, is all just a set of trade-offs, right? Like what can the market currently bear? And there are other products on the market right now where you can have multiple people view it in 3D at the same time. And our opinion is that, and it seems like the market's opinion too, is that it's the quality is just not good enough. So you're going to end up, by doing that, you end up getting a much reduced resolution. And there's a lot of other complexity too, because for example, there's not really any way to have it work that way and also have it be 2D, which means you'd basically be swapping your TV out for a TV that's only 3D and you can't do 2D on it. And then it's going to be really expensive and it's not even going to be very sharp. So if you're willing to make all those trade-offs, there's a product like that in the market for you right now today. But instead, what we want to do is we want to focus on products that people usually use by themselves anyway. That's going to be their smartphone. That's going to be their tablet. That's going to be their laptop. That's going to be their computer monitor. And all these things, 99% of the time, you're using it completely by yourself. You're not showing it to someone else. And even with like a phone or a tablet, if you want to show someone, you usually just give it to them. You're not going to be like crowding around and seeing what they're doing. You're like, oh, I set this up and I just want you see it. And I think as long as you're willing to deal with that one trade-off, which is that it's one person at a time, there's no other trade-off with our system. It is beautiful. You get full 2D quality. You get super high resolution. You get an experience you don't get from any other display, which is that it has this incredible 3D depth to it. And it comes with tons and tons of content and AI tools that let you have unlimited content. Any photo or any video that you've ever taken or you can ever find on the internet just works in 3D on our device. So, yeah, I think we're focused on that. But to answer your question, yeah, in the future, if we can get to the point where I think probably when you get to either 16K and if not 16K, like 32K displays, yeah, it'll be much, much easier for us to be able to do something like that.
I have a very quick question. So let's say that I'm a filmmaker and I have a short film that I've created and I want to watch that film in 3D. Can you give me a timeline of how long it would take to convert it to 3D and to watch it in 3D using your technology right
Yeah.
now?
So just for the sake of this, where is your movie? Like, is it like on a flash drive? Is it on a computer? Is it on YouTube? And just answer that, and I'll tell you exactly how you can do it.
I have a film on YouTube. How long till I can watch it in 3D?
Yeah. You open the YouTube app on the LoomPad 2, you hit the share button, you hit the Leia 2 button, and then 5 seconds later, you're watching your movie in 3D.
So you're saying that as a filmmaker, I can convert anything I've ever worked on into 3D in 5 seconds?
Yeah, in real time. In real time, it just takes. The reason it takes 5 seconds is because it has to buffer, just like 2D. So it has to buffer your video from YouTube. So instantaneously, actually, yes, anything can be converted in real time.
So faster, basically, than me walking to my front door and welcoming someone in my house, I can convert a film that I've worked on into 3D. That's incredible.
And it looks great. And our data shows that this is the primary way that people use our devices. They love watching all the YouTube content that they normally watch and watch it in 3D. They prefer it to 2D. It's that sticky. Now, I mean, I'm going to add my caveat, which is that if you're an artist and a creator, the real-time mobile conversion that we have, it's going to look really good, but it might not be the perfect quality that you want. So you might want to use our API and get NVIDIA GPUs in the cloud to do the conversion instead, which is going to be even higher quality. But both work. It's just like, what tier of quality do you want? And in both cases, you can either have it be completely instant, or you can have it spend more time to get you even higher quality if you'd like that. But the answer is in the best case, you don't have to wait. You can convert right now, real time, as much video as you want, live streams, videos that you take in 4K. It all just works.
Where do I sign up? Where do I get one?
LeiaInc.com, and you can get yourself a LoomPad 2. Or if you want to build an app or a system using our APIs, you can go to cloud.leiapix.com, and that will give you full access to our APIs. Right now, we're focused on the photos and the animations, like I said, but within a few weeks, video is gonna go there as well. And if people want to work with us more closely, or they have a special thing that they want to work on, they can just hit us up, business@leiainc.com, and we'd love to work with them on that. And, we give people access to it early. If someone is like, hey, I have a movie and I want it to be in 3D in 1 week, email me and I'll make it happen. But if you can wait a few weeks, it'll be on the API, and anyone around the world can access it and convert whatever they want at any time really easily.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a really great way to begin to wrap up this conversation. I have one quick question, and then I think Shelby had some rapid fire questions for you guys. So my last question really is, I guess if we could all just use our imagination a little, over the next 12 months, AI, of course, is going to continue to progress, not only at Leia, but just for the entire creative world. What do you think are some dramatic changes that we're going to see in the creative process? What are some innovations that haven't become consumer-facing or creator-facing at this point that will begin to be unveiled that you guys are excited about, or you think might really change the landscape of creativity?
Marley, you want to start us off?
Well, from a creator's perspective, I think there's going to be an intentionality. I think, we were experiencing a time right now where, we're kind of poking at what's possible and just amazed at the ripples, right? And right now there's a saturation of content, that's generative, that is, AI powered, let's call it. And I'm really excited for creators to really think deeply about what they can do with these new capabilities and what stories they want to tell, from the heart, with a lot of intention, and how these tools are really going to unlock those visions, and I think back of my favorite directors, Akira Kurosawa, Alejandro Jodorowsky. Wow, if they had this technology, can you imagine, what Holy Mountain would have been like, with 3D in mind, what movie like Dreams, Martin Scorsese and Kurosawa together, would have done. And so I'm really excited for filmmakers, creators, designers to now really think intentionally about, how they're going to use these tools for storytelling, what that's going to unlock for them, and for us to maybe even see like new genres, new formats for media that we haven't seen before. Yeah, I will say, I'm a former Grammy Awards manager, so I'm very familiar with the institutional space and what it takes to change an institution's rules in terms of entering media. And I can tell you right now, there are serious debates happening at Academy of Motion Pictures, the Recording Academy, about the use of AI for creative products that are being submitted for the highest awards. And there is going to be a very, very, very cool future, for this type of media, as it rises, through these institutions and, ultimately out in public and mass.
I mean, I want to have a whole nother conversation with you, Marlon, about managing the Grammy Awards. That's wild. What a job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Institutions, in many ways, they are kind of serve as like a yardstick for social and societal change, and AI is disrupting, it's really kind of bending the rules, changing, what it means to be a creator, what it means to make a film, what it means to make, any recording, what is photography, all these sorts of things, we're starting to see incredible breakthroughs. So, coming from that end, and seeing how fast the technology is moving and how creators are, just gripping it and running with it, I think is going to really, shake up a lot of these institutions. And we're going to see like incredible things come to light.
I love that you brought up Kurosawa, because I'm so curious. I've had this nagging suspicion that the very best filmmakers in the world, because of that creative friction that we talked about earlier, we've never actually seen their films before, because they haven't had the creative tools, they haven't had the opportunity to get their story out there, whether it's because of finances, life situations, things like that. I'm curious if you think that what's going to happen moving forward is just the great democratizer of storytelling, and how, we truly will now begin to see the very best stories coming from the very best storytellers. And do you believe that those storytellers are going to come from places that you wouldn't have expected? Like, they're not all out here in Hollywood, right? Like, where are we going to see these stories? And like, do you have any sort of idea of like some represented stories or some like artist trends that you've seen potential in?
Absolutely. And it's so cool that you mentioned this, because there's a really great story about Akira Kurosawa and the production of Ran. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the production was delayed due to finance. And Kurosawa began to illustrate the scenes. And if you look this up, it's incredible. There's a whole collection of these like beautiful storyboards for the movie Ran, my favorite movie of all time. And the way that he was able to, actually manifest these characters in these scenes, from his visions in through these illustrations is absolutely wild. And today we can see how someone would pick up, for example, we have an app called Leia Dream on LoomPad 2, where you can just, begin to prompt, different scenes and ideas. It's powered by Stable Diffusion. Wow, what a concept of knowing that there's nothing that's going to stop you from making your film. That's nothing is going to stop you from getting your idea out, right? And I've been part of different creator cohorts of working with communities that are not the usual suspects, right? That are able to produce these things. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that. As production costs go down, as the accessibility of technology is more abundant, we're going to begin to see many more voices enter the space. And so where these things are going to where these works are going to come from, it's going to be every corner of the world, and that's what's really exciting. So I can't wait to continue seeing this wave, and yeah. I'd love to know what Nima thinks about all this stuff too.
Yeah, I think kind of the things that we're gonna really see in the short term is I think there's gonna be like two kinds of big changes. So we're already seeing Midjourney is making 3D a core part of their pipeline. So depth maps are just becoming a part of how you prompt images. So I think that we're going to start seeing the evolution of literally all media having 3D. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be seeing it in 3D. What it means is that we're going to be upgrading all of our existing files to have depth maps built into it, just because that gives you significantly more optionality, and that's just the direction we're moving into the future. So we're going to see that process in 1 year is almost everything, all the new media that's being generated will have some sort of depth map, whether it's from iPhone 15 Pros, spatial video and spatial photos, or whether it's going to be captured on a headset, or whether it's your existing, family photos and videos from like the 70s, 80s, 90s that you're now just upgrading to have 3D. We're just going to see the media do that. And then the next one is I think that we're going to start seeing AI video coprocessors. And these are going to be, there's some devices that already have them, but we're going to start seeing them become standard. They might become part of everyone's TV box or AV receiver, or even part of your TV or part of your phones and other displays, where this entire chip, the whole focus of it is doing various AI upscaling on your content. Whether that means you're going to be able to take black and white movies and make them in color in real time, whether you're going to be able to take low res standard def and make it 4K in real time, whether it means you're going to be able to take 2D and to make it 3D in real time, like what we do, whether you want to be able to do style transfer on it in real time, meaning like you are watching a show and you're like, hey, I want this in the style of Akira Toriyama. I want to see this look like Dragon Ball Z, or I want to make it look like it was shot on film, like all this type of style transfer, relighting, things like that. I think users are going to be able to change that, just like today they can change the brightness and contrast on their TV. You're going to have all these new AI enabled options built into your displays that will let you transform whatever media you want to fit your desires and wants and needs at that exact point in time. And I think that's where we're moving.
And can I ask you, where are we technologically? How far are we from these chips, these devices being able to do that? Because right now, if I want to, let's say, up-res something from 1080 to 4K, I have to use a third-party application. It takes forever. My computer hates me, crashes half the time. It feels almost impossible. But are there other developments that have been coming out, and just like where are we? Is this like 12 months away that we'll be able to adjust the resolution like we adjust our volume?
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing a lot of solutions like that. For example, like Samsung TVs and LG have been releasing some upscaling tech on their televisions for quite a while now. I think one of the big differences that's kind of hard to communicate is that a lot of our computing devices are general purpose computers. And because of that, the CPUs and GPUs and even the ML cores that are built into your SoC, like those are not meant for specific tasks. They're meant to be able to be manipulated and programmed to do a million different things, right? I think that one of the reasons people have lots of issues with doing conversion on current devices, like I do too on all my devices, is that my devices are general purpose. They're not meant for conversion. I'm forcing my GPU to convert something, which is not what it was originally designed to do. Same thing with our technology. Like none of the computers that we use, none of the chips we use were designed to turn 2D into 3D. We're programming it to do that. But if you made custom hardware that was designed for video upscaling, which we've seen some people do. We see some people do it with FPGA, especially in the retro gaming scene. There's like the open source scan converter. There's the RetroTink 4K that's coming out. And all these are FPGA-based solutions that are being programmed to be their own chip. And the chip is hyper focused on just doing video transformations and different types of scaling, whether it's upscaling, deinterlacing, whatever it's going to be, right? And so I think to answer your question, it's like, the technology is here. Who is going to start shipping it? Who is going to commit to building, 1 million units of an upscaling chip that has, X, Y, and Z feature, and say, you TV manufacturer, you monitor manufacturer, you phone manufacturer, you need this chip inside your device. Someone needs to pull the trigger, feel like they have to know it's the future and make it happen. But I think that technologically we're there. We just need someone to commit and have some conviction,
That's amazing. I don't. There's one more question I feel like I really just want to hear from you guys on, and it's just working with AI. How does it different doing development work with AI versus traditional applications? I feel like I'm just so curious about that experience.
I'd say the biggest difference for me is how hard to predict what you're going to get. Like we're so used to computers being very digital, and it's like, I want this output. The computer is going to give me this output. Even when it fails to give me that output, it fails in a consistent way. It fails in a way that's deterministic. I'm able to understand like why it did that. But the thing about AI is it's like non-deterministic by design, right? You want to give it different seeds and get different outputs, and you just don't really know how to, even the people like creating the model, they don't always know why things happen the way they do. You have to like research it and go back to each of the layers and try to understand why it's making these changes. And I think that non-deterministic aspect of it, it's a lot more like working with people than it is like working with computers. Because with computers, I am doing X because I want Y, and I have to learn how to do X the right way so I can get Y. But with AI, it's like, hey, I want this thing, and people sometimes don't understand what that means, and neither does AI. I mean, like one of my favorite examples of like this keeps happening, and like people meme about it, but it actually happened in my school where like a teacher said like we had to do reports on euthanasia. Like it's a very serious concept, but people keep making reports that are about youth in Asia, like children in Asia, and they like completely misunderstand what the assignment is. And I feel like AI has that exact same problem where like you think you're telling it exactly what you want. You're like, I'm being clear, and they just completely misunderstand and go do the wrong thing. So it's a lot more like working with people in that way.
That is so funny. I don't know where we heard this, but I don't know, Caleb, if you just started saying this or heard it from somewhere, but it's like when you throw salmon into a tornado and expect sushi. This is like
Yeah.
working with AI.
Yeah, that was Pixar talking about their work on Elemental. They used AI for some of it. Yeah.
That's so funny. Man, this is such a fun conversation. Thank you both for your time. And
Of course, thank you.
it's been amazing. So, Caleb, are you okay if I move on to some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So I have 6 questions for you. And it's kind of yes or no. You just answer yes or no. You each can answer. Okay. So rapid fire questions. The first one is watching 3D on a LumaPad smoother than watching a 3D film in the theater?
Yes.
Should artists be scared of AI?
No.
Is the media overly critical of artificial intelligence?
No, because I think whenever something is, revolutionary, people should not criticize it, but they should be skeptical. And that's why I think it's okay. I mean, I don't think they're like people who are like haters. I don't think they're going to succeed. They're going to fail. Like AI is the best, but I don't know. I think it's a little unreasonable to think that people aren't going to be scared about the possibilities. I think that's reasonable and it's fine. And it's kind of interesting to hear both sides.
I'll share this. 1972, Alvin Toffler, my favorite futurist, wrote the book Future Shock. And he basically said, future is either something you're going to acclimate to or something that's going to happen to you, right? And there's no theory of, transformational change, economic change without a theory of conflict, right? And so right now we're entering a period where there's going to be radical transformation in every industry. And of course, there's going to be things to iron out, right? There's all sorts of really, thoughtful considerations that people are bringing up right now. And that's just a part of the process.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to read that book now. Sounds amazing.
It's aged very well.
We'll put it in the show notes for everyone. There will be a link.
Yes. Okay. Are your developers actually magicians?
Not all of them. Only a few of them practice magic regularly.
But if they do, I'm sure they use Theory 11 cards because they're the coolest. Do you believe aliens are real?
Yes. I think it's statistically unlikely that they don't.
We're the aliens.
Last question. Do you guys believe that we're living in a simulation?
There's really compelling evidence. I guess I'd say I'm agnostic on this. I don't know, and I don't really care. But I'd say there's really compelling evidence for. There's not a lot of compelling evidence against, but it's hard to believe when I don't have tons and tons of evidence.
Yeah. I like to think we're the director of our own movie.
So is that a no? Not a simulation, right?
It's certain things are just so hard to comprehend, but I focus on the things that I have control over,
Yeah.
and I think whether we're in a video game or something, I think ultimately I do believe in freedom and our ability to change our circumstances.
Yeah. I align with you, Marlon. Caleb, I'm curious your answer. I've never heard this. Do you believe we're living in a
we're
sim?
100% in a simulation. Yeah, no doubt.
You just see glitches in your
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, guys, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. This was really a fascinating conversation, and I know that our filmmaking audience and the creators that are part of our community are absolutely going to be interested in testing out your tools and in all of the developments that you guys have coming down the pipeline. This is really interesting stuff, and I mean, I really like, as someone who consumes media, I just can't thank you guys enough for the work that you're doing to push just creative entertainment forward. It's really awesome.
Thanks so much for having us. It was a really fun conversation. Got me thinking about a lot of possibilities.
Absolutely. And thanks for teaching, so many people, all these amazing techniques.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's in my DNA for sure.
Yeah. To be a bridge, that's our hope, right? From that past and future. So I love that. Well, thank you both. Caleb, would you like to wrap up?
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Curious Refuge podcast. If you want to learn how to do AI filmmaking for yourself, you can, of course, check out our bootcamp over on curiousrefuge.com, where we cover all of the tools available to you as an aspiring AI filmmaker, including Leia Pix, and I'm sure some of their new technology that will be coming out in just a few months. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. See you soon.